Hello, Scorpio. I need to tell you something that won't be easy to hear. But it was never meant to be easy. You've always known this truth. Rarely arrives gently in your life. It shakes the ground. It burns through illusion. It strips the mask from what once felt safe. And today, truth is coming for you again, not to break you, but to free you from something you've outgrown, something you've been sensing for weeks now but haven't had the strength or the clarity to name. There is someone in your orbit, someone close, someone who has looked you in the eye and smiled, someone whose voice you know by heart, whose words you've trusted, and whose presence you've welcomed into the quietest corners of your soul, and they are preparing a betrayal in silence. They are calculating what to say, how to move, how to make you doubt what you feel, how to undermine the clarity that lives just beneath your skin. And the cruelest part of all is that you've already given this person something sacred. You've let them see you. You've let them near the things you rarely show anyone else. This is not a stranger's betrayal. Scorpio, this isn't coming from a distant critic or some passerby who doesn't matter. This is being prepared by someone who knows where your soft places live, someone who knows the code to your most private doors, and that is why it stings. Why your body has been tense around them lately, even if your mind has tried to reason it away. That's why the energy has felt off. Why you found yourself second-guessing words that used to feel natural. Why your nervous system has been sounding alarms even when everything on the surface seems polite, calm, or even loving. You feel it. Even now. That pull in your chest, that knot in your stomach, that sudden discomfort in a conversation that used to feel safe, it isn't paranoia. It's your gift waking up. It's your intuition refusing to let you ignore what you already know. You want to believe the best in people. You always have. And I know Scorpio is supposed to be suspicious, secretive, hard to reach. But underneath all that armor, you're loyal to the bone. You love with a depth most people can't even comprehend. And when you open the door to someone, you don't do it halfway. That's why this hurts. That's why you haven't wanted to look too closely. Because to really look would mean letting go of a version of them you hoped was true. But Scorpio, you're not here to live in fantasy. You're here to see clearly. And the truth is that someone you trusted is using what they know about you. Not to love you better, but to manipulate how you see yourself, to make you question your power, to plant quiet seeds of self-doubt where there used to be knowing. This betrayal isn't about money. It isn't about status or control. It's something more intimate. It's someone trying to diminish your light from the inside. Someone who benefits from you doubting your own strength. Maybe they've been telling you you're too much. Maybe they've been minimizing your accomplishments with passive comments. Maybe they've been listening too closely to your fears and too loosely to your victories. Whatever form it takes, this is someone who has made a decision, conscious or not, to keep you small so they can feel bigger beside you. And Scorpio, you were never meant to shrink for anyone's comfort. You have tried to dismiss it. You've told yourself that you're just being sensitive, that you should give them the benefit of the doubt, that you're overanalyzing. But every time you say that, you betray your own knowing. And that's the real danger here, not what they're doing behind the scenes, but what you're doing to yourself in order not to see it. You're turning down the volume on your inner voice. You're gaslighting your own intuition. You're trying to stay soft when everything in you is telling you to sharpen your clarity. You don't need to confront them. You don't need to create chaos. You don't need to tell them what you see. You only need to believe yourself. Scorpio, the person planning this betrayal has no idea who they're dealing with. They see your vulnerability as weakness because they've never had to face someone who can walk through fire and come out stronger. But you know the truth, your vulnerability is power. Your honesty is a blade. Your depth is a weapon they can't use because it doesn't belong to them. It belongs to you. And now is the time to reclaim it. Because this betrayal, painful as it may be, is not here to destroy you. It's here to wake you up. It's here to remind you that no matter how much you love someone, you can't unsee what you know. You can't unknow what your body is telling you. And you were not born with this level of perception just to ignore it. In the coming days, the signs will become louder. The energy will shift in a way that you can't ignore. Something will be said. Something will slip. Something will show, and when it does, you won't be shocked. You'll be ready. You'll remember this moment. You'll remember that you were warned, that your spirit was protecting you before the facts ever did, that your energy picked it up long before your eyes could see it. And when the betrayal reveals itself fully, you won't break. You'll rise. Because what they tried to steal was never theirs to hold. Because what they tried to shake only made your roots go deeper. Because what they tried to dim only made you burn brighter. So no, you're not losing someone. You're being shown what they truly are. And that knowing is your liberation. You won't need revenge. You won't need explanations. You'll just walk away cleaner, wiser, and more aligned with your own essence than you've ever been. Let the truth hurt, but don't let it harden you. Let it teach you, but don't let it turn you cold. Let it move through you, and then let it move out of you. Because what's waiting for you after this truth is something bigger, something more beautiful, something built on honesty and mutual respect and real. Lasting loyalty, the kind you give so freely and so rarely receive. But now you will, because you've stopped ignoring what you feel, because you've started trusting your power, because you were made for truth. And truth is finally coming home. And maybe, Scorpio, the most painful part of all is that you already knew. You didn't need evidence. You didn't need someone to tell you. Your body told you. Your chest tightened every time you were near them. Your mind paused when their words didn't quite match their energy. You caught the slight shift in their gaze when you shared your joy, the flicker of something behind their smile that didn't feel quite right. And still, you gave them grace. You told yourself not to overthink, not to ruin something that seemed good. You wanted to believe the best. You always do. Because despite what people say about you, your edge, your walls, your silence, you have one of the softest hearts in the zodiac. You don't love easily. But when you do, you love completely. And when that love is met with dishonesty, something inside you begins to fracture, not just your trust in them, but your trust in yourself. That's what makes this betrayal so corrosive. It's not about money. It's not about ego. It's not about a broken promise you could simply walk away from. This is about someone aiming for something far more sacred, your relationship with your own perception. They don't just want to lie to you, they want to make you lie to yourself. They want you to doubt what you feel, question what you saw, silence the voice inside you that says, something isn't right. And for a while, they succeeded. For a while, you did quiet that voice. You dismissed the tension in your body as anxiety. You explained away the inconsistencies as coincidence. You covered up their patterns with your empathy. You gave them room to be imperfect, hoping that maybe your love could heal whatever was off. But now, that voice is getting louder. Your body won't relax around them anymore. The story no longer holds together, and your spirit is done waiting for more proof. This betrayal, Scorpio, is not meant to destroy your confidence. It's meant to remind you that it was never meant to be outsourced. Your strength doesn't come from being believed by others. It comes from believing yourself. You weren't born with razor-sharp intuition, so you could ignore it. You weren't given X-ray vision just to keep pretending everything's fine. You were born with the gift of depth for moments like this, when surface explanations no longer make sense, and only truth will do. This moment, as painful as it is not your undoing. It is your reclaiming. Because here's the secret. No one tells you about betrayal. It never begins when someone lies to you. It begins the moment you stop listening to yourself. And now, you're listening. Now, you're tuning back in. Now, and you're remembering that the most dangerous thing about a manipulator isn't how they twist the truth, it's how they get you to twist your own. And this time, you won't play along. You don't owe them your silence. You don't owe them your confusion. You don't owe them access to your softness just because they once knew how to speak your language. What you owe to yourself is protection. What you owe is presence. What you owe is the right to pause, to question, to step back from anyone who makes your inner knowing shrink. So yes, Scorpio, the betrayal is real, but so is your awakening. And this time, you're not choosing to ignore it. You're choosing yourself. And if you need even more confirmation, Scorpio, look no further than your own birth. Because the stars didn't just mark your soul with power, they also marked your timeline with precision. For those of you born between October 23rd and November 2nd, the betrayal brewing around you is most likely tied to someone deeply familiar, someone you've allowed into the core of your life, someone whose opinion once mattered more than you care to admit. This person has watched your growth with quiet discomfort. They don't say it out loud, but their energy has shifted. They used to celebrate your ideas. Now, they question your every move, and it's subtle small doubts masked as concern. The side comments disguised as feedback, but it's been enough to make you hesitate, enough to make you second-guess your own brilliance. This is not love. This is control wrapped in closeness, and it's time to see it for what it is. For those born between November 3rd and November 13th, the betrayal feels more strategic, more calculated, more disguised. You've entrusted someone with sensitive information, your dreams, your fears, your past, or even your current plans, and that person has turned what you shared into quiet leverage. They're not just watching you, they're manipulating the narrative around you. And because you're so used to carrying others' secrets, it's been easy to overlook what they're doing with yours. But now, the cracks are showing. Conversations feel rehearsed. People are asking questions they shouldn't know to ask. Information you never meant to spread is somehow circling back to you in strange, distorted forms. And deep down, you know exactly who opened the door. And then there are the Scorpios born between November 14th and November 22nd, the ones who have poured their heart into something big, something creative, something sacred. You once had someone by your side who championed your vision, who stood beside you in moments of doubt, who spoke your dreams aloud as if they were their own. But something has shifted. Their energy doesn't match their words anymore. They say they support you, but your momentum seems to rattle them. And now, behind the scenes, they're pulling threads slowly, subtly, almost imperceptibly undermining the very thing they once claimed to believe in. You can feel the sabotage, not loud or dramatic, but methodical and rooted in envy. The dream you thought you were building together now feels strangely heavier when they're around. And still, Scorpio, no matter what day you were born, the theme is the same. Someone is feeding on your silence, depending on your desire to avoid conflict and using your depth as a place to hide their intentions. But that hiding place is no longer safe because you're no longer shrinking to make others comfortable. You're no longer pretending not to know what you know. The moment has come to choose truth, even when it costs you the illusion of connection. Because only when the false falls away can the real remain. So here is the truth that breaks through every illusion. Scorpio, your intuition has never been your enemy, never been something to silence. Doubt, or apologize for, no matter how many people have called it paranoia, no matter how many times you've been told you're overthinking, too intense, too suspicious, too much. because what they saw as an inconvenience was actually a divine alarm, a sacred compass, a built-in protection system designed not only to warn you of what's false, but to guide you toward what is real. And this gift, this sensitivity, this ability to feel energy before words are spoken and to sense motives before masks fall, this is your birthright. This is the edge that no one can take from you. And it is this very gift that is waking up again now, louder than before, refusing to be silenced by politeness or doubt or social rules that ask you to betray yourself just to maintain peace with people who were never at peace with your light. Because let's be honest, Scorpio, they were never uncomfortable with you. They were uncomfortable with the reflection you held up to them. The way your presence made them feel seen in places they weren't ready to face. The way you noticed the tiny shifts, the hesitations, the inconsistencies, the half smiles that never reached their eyes, the supportive words that never landed right in your body. And while you tried to give them space, time, understanding, while you bent yourself backward to believe the best in them, deep down, you always knew that there was something not aligned, something not true, something building in silence behind your back while they stood in front of you pretending to clap, pretending to care, pretending to be safe, and now the time of pretending is over. Not because you're bitter, but because your soul refuses to be lied to any longer. What they thought would break you is actually the thing that's awakening you. Not just intellectually, but spiritually. Not just emotionally, but energetically. And as this betrayal continues to reveal itself, you'll begin to see it not as a cruel attack, but as a necessary detonation of everything false you've tolerated for far too long. A necessary burning down of what you clung to out of habit, out of hope, out of fear that maybe this time they were telling the truth, that maybe this time you could trust what you wanted to see instead of what you actually felt. And while the pain of this realization is real and valid, it is not final, because what rises from the ruins of deception is always stronger, clearer, sharper, and far more sovereign than the version of you who accepted half-truths in the name of loyalty. Scorpio, you were not built to live half a life. You were not created to settle for people who smile at your growth, but secretly hope it stops just short of surpassing them. You were not born to shrink your gifts, so others can feel safe in their shadows. And every time you ignored your gut to maintain a relationship, every time you silenced your inner voice just to keep things peaceful on the outside, you chipped away at your own power. Not because you were weak, but because you were taught to fear what would happen if you truly stood in your knowing, if you truly followed your inner yes and your sacred no. But that time is gone now, and the universe has orchestrated this betrayal not to punish you, but to rewire you, to return you to your natural state of clarity, to remind you that your discernment is not a flaw. It's a spiritual survival tool. And when you trust it fully, you become untouchable in the places they once tried to destabilize. They wanted to create confusion, but instead they created clarity. They wanted to make you small, but instead they made you undeniable. They wanted to twist your mind, but instead they sharpened your perception. They wanted to bury you in doubt, but instead they planted you in truth. And what's rising from that truth now is a version of you they never saw coming, the one who no longer needs explanations to walk away, the one who no longer tolerates vague energy and conditional loyalty, the one who no longer seeks reassurance from people who only offered it when they thought you were beneath them, the one who remembers that the deepest loyalty you'll ever know must be directed inward first, toward the part of you that always knew, always felt, always sensed, even when you were too scared to follow that knowing. This betrayal is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of your mastery. Because this time, you're not collapsing, you're recalibrating. This time, you're not breaking. You're blooming in a new direction. And while there will be grief, yes, there will be moments when you wish the truth wasn't so clear. Moments when you long for the comfort of the illusion. When you miss the version of them you thought was real, those moments are not a sign of weakness. They're a sign of how deeply you felt, how much you loved, how much you invested in someone who was never capable of holding the weight of your sincerity. And when those waves of sorrow come, let them pass through you like rain. Let them water the soil of who you're becoming. Because even grief, when honored, becomes a kind of medicine, and when the dust settles, and it will, you will look back on this moment not as a time you were broken, but as the moment you finally chose yourself, fully, without hesitation, without apology, without needing anyone else to validate the voice you've always carried. And from that place, Scorpio, everything changes. Your relationships shift, your energy expands, your path clears, the real ones reveal themselves, the false ones remove themselves. And you no longer need to chase closure or explanations because your intuition has already delivered what you needed to know. And the lesson you're taking with you is one you'll never have to repeat again, because once you truly see, you can never unsee. So trust this. Not because it's easy, not because it feels good, but because it's true, and truth is always worth it. Even when it hurts, even when it costs you something you once held dear, because what you gain in return is priceless. Your alignment, your clarity, your peace, your freedom, and above all, your power fully restored, fully awake, and fully yours again. So what do you do now, Scorpio? Now that you see what was once hidden, now that the whispers in your chest have become thunder in your bones, now that the truth no longer knocks gently but stands in front of you, unwavering and undeniable, how do you respond to the betrayal that is no longer speculation but revelation? You don't chase them down, and you don't demand explanations. You don't shout into the void or try to convince anyone of what you feel in your soul, because the most powerful thing you can do right now is not react, but withdraw. Not in silence fueled by fear or heartbreak, but in sovereign stillness. In sacred detachment, in full-body clarity that knows when to close the door, not with drama, but with dignity. You don't owe them your reaction. Scorpio, what you owe yourself is your energy. You owe yourself protection. You owe yourself peace. And right now, that means you don't confront the betrayal head-on, not because you're afraid, but because you're wise enough to know that direct confrontation will only feed what you're trying to cut off. They want your confusion. They want your pain. They want the version of you that still doubts your own instincts and needs their validation to feel clear. But that version is gone now. That version shed its skin the moment you chose to trust your own knowing over their charm, their stories, their carefully controlled performances, and from here on out, your power lies not in engaging, but in extracting. You begin by calling your energy back, quietly, firmly, repeatedly. Every place you've been overgiving, you stop. Every space where your presence was taken for granted, you retreat. Every conversation that once felt like pulling teeth or dancing around someone else's ego, you simply let end. You don't explain yourself. And you don't announce your departure. You let the silence speak. You let your absence teach. You let the space you leave behind reveal what your energy was doing for them all along. And as you do, as you reclaim the fragments of yourself that were scattered in the name of loyalty, you begin to feel it, the return of strength, the quiet rebuilding of your own center, the sensation of being rooted again in something that cannot be manipulated, your truth. You're not here to fix broken people who enjoy breaking you. You're not here to translate love out of someone's cruelty or generosity out of their control. You're here to honor the gift of being able to feel everything and still choose what's right for you. That is your mastery. That is your magic. And now, In the aftermath of deception, in the stillness after the wave, you are being asked to choose clarity over closeness. Not all proximity is intimacy. Not all connection is safe. And you don't have to carry anyone with you who would rather see you uncertain than fully alive. This is your spiritual filtration process. This is where the noise clears. This is where the real ones rise and the false ones fall away. And no, it's not comfortable. Letting go rarely is, but you are no longer confusing tension with chemistry. You are no longer calling exhaustion devotion. You are no longer trying to hold together a connection that only works when you silence parts of yourself to make it easier for someone else to. You're done bleeding for people who never intended to bandage you, and the moment you choose to let go without anger, without bitterness, without needing to be understood, is the moment you become untouchable in the places where you were once constantly wounded. Scorpio, you don't need revenge. Your healing is your revolution. Your evolution is your response. And the most powerful act of all is to become so clear, so grounded, so aligned with your truth that they cannot reach you with the old games, the old manipulation, the old emotional currencies that once kept you looping in cycles of guilt, over-explaining, and emotional debt. You've paid the price already. You've done the emotional labor. You've carried the weight. Now, you're being asked to rise, and not quietly, not invisibly, not as someone who has to make themselves smaller in order to survive, but as someone who walks in full view of the world with nothing to hide and nothing to prove. This betrayal, this unraveling is not a tragedy. It's a doorway. It's the catalyst your soul needed to stop negotiating with people who were never meant to go where you're going. It's the moment where you stop seeking belonging in spaces that can't hold your depth. It's the beginning of a new cycle, one where you are surrounded by people who match your integrity, your emotional intelligence, your loyalty, your light. And to call those people in, you must first clear the ones who are only there to test your boundaries, not honor them. This is your rebirth, Scorpio, not in fire this time, but in clarity, not in destruction, but in refinement, not because you were broken, but because you outgrew the skin of the person you were when you accepted that kind of treatment. And now that you've seen what you needed to see, you will not return to pretending you don't know. You will not go back to explaining why your intuition matters. You will not play small to keep fragile people comfortable. That era is over. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to cut cords and not look back. Pratus. You are allowed to rebuild in silence and emerge glowing. You are allowed to set the standard and not apologize when people fall short of it. And above all, you are allowed to be done. Done with manipulation. Done with guilt. Done with relationships that require you to abandon yourself in order to be loved. That's not love. That's dependency. And you were never meant to live in bondage to someone else's inability to meet you where you are. So you walk, not because you're cold, but because you're clear. You rise, not because you're angry, but because you're aligned. You detak, not because you're heartless, but because your heart is finally at peace with the truth. And when the tears come and they might you, let them fall. You let them cleanse. You let them carry away what's no longer yours to hold. And then you breathe deeply, fully, like someone who just remembered that freedom was always available the moment you stopped choosing people who made you forget who you were. Scorpio, you are not the victim of betrayal. You are the phoenix who rises because of it. You are not defined by what they did behind your back. You are defined by what you choose to become now that you see it clearly. And you will not crumble under this. You will crystallize. You will become the version of you who no longer asks for permission to be powerful, deep, intense, honest, intuitive, or protective of your energy, because now you know, because now you see, and because now, finally, You're choosing to live as the person you were always meant to be.